Story 1. The Pack at Blackwood Lane. The wind came down from the north like a blade, slicing through the trees that ringed the cabin on Blackwood Lane. Ethan Harlow sat on the edge of his bed, polishing the old Remington shotgun that had followed him through 2 tours overseas and 10 quiet years since. The house was still except for the slow, rhythmic creak of the pine walls shifting under the cold. Outside, the snow had started again, thin at first, like sifted flour, soft against the window glass. He'd spent the day fixing the porch railing, chopping firewood, trying not to think. That was most of what life out here was, keeping busy enough that the quiet didn't start talking back. Sometimes it still did. At 9:12 p.m., Ethan's hand froze mid-polish. There was a sound outside. Not the wind, not the usual groan of the pines. A whisper. Low, human, quick, like a murmur passed between men. He frowned, cocked his head. The voice came again, slightly clearer this time, drifting up from beyond the porch steps. Then another joined it, rougher, lower, both speaking in a language Ethan hadn't heard since deployment. Silencio, la luz está encendida. Quiet, the light is on. Spanish. Definitely Spanish. Ethan set the shotgun down gently and reached for the flashlight on his nightstand. He flicked it on, then off again. No sense showing his position. His pulse was already thudding in his ears. He'd heard things in the woods before. Hunters, coyotes, the occasional drunk off the highway. But whispers in Spanish at this hour, 40 minutes from the nearest town, in the dead of winter? He moved toward the window. The cabin's interior lights glowed faintly, reflecting his own anxious face on the glass. And then, in an instant, everything went black. The lights, the heater, even the low hum of the fridge, all gone. Power outage. Ethan swore under his breath. He kept the flashlight off, crouching by the wall. He could feel the pulse of his own heartbeat in his throat. Outside, the wind carried a faint metallic sound. Chains? Boots crunching over frost? He reached for the Remington again and slid a shell into the chamber. The old motion felt too natural, too easy. Through the slats of the blinds, he saw them. 5 figures. They stood under the moonlight in a perfect semicircle just beyond the porch. Tall, broad-shouldered, faces hidden behind crude reindeer masks, papier-mâché or leather, antlers jutting like branches. The masks caught the moon in a pale gleam, each pair of eyeholes dark and fixed on his window. They didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, their breath pluming in slow clouds. Ethan's mouth went dry. He crouched back, pulling his phone from his pocket. No signal bars. The power was out, and the snow had started falling heavier. He tried to think. Were there any neighbors nearby? No, the closest property was nearly a mile east. He dialed 911 anyway, holding the phone near the window, hoping for a flicker of reception. Come on, he muttered. Come on, come on. The line clicked faintly, then a garbled huff sound. 911, what's your? And then static. The myth. That's when the first thud hit the front door. Not a knock. A strike. Hard, deliberate. Like someone hitting the wood with the butt of a gun. The whole cabin seemed to shiver. Another thud followed, then a third, in rhythm. The whispering outside grew louder, overlapping, laughing almost, but not in a human way. Ethan aimed the shotgun toward the hallway and shouted, I'm armed. You take one more step, and I'll. Glass shattered behind him. The bedroom window exploded inward, shards raining across the floor. Snow swept in with the cold, swirling white against the dark. Ethan ducked instinctively, spinning to aim toward the window, flashlight beam slicing through the air. Nothing. Then, footsteps on the porch. Heavy boots. The whispering turned to chuckling. Come out. Soldier boy. A voice called, sing-song, mocking. We just wanna play. Ethan's breath clouded the beam of his flashlight. He swung the gun toward the sound and fired once. Boom. The recoil slammed his shoulder. The blast tore through the silence, echoing across the trees. A muffled yell followed. Someone hit, maybe grazed, but no one fell. The whispering stopped. Then, from somewhere above the porch, a new sound began, tapping. Slow, deliberate. On the roof, Ethan's skin went cold. He backed toward the window he'd broken and forced it open wider. The snow stung his face as he climbed onto the sill, shotgun slung across his shoulder. The roof sloped gently toward the back of the cabin. He hauled himself up, boots slipping on the ice. From this height, he could see over the tree line, the world a blur of white and shadow. Down below, about 30 yards out, a black pickup truck idled in the dark. Its headlights flashed once, off, then on again. A signal. Ethan aimed his flashlight toward it. But the beam caught only drifting snow. No license plate. No markings. Just the faint outline of someone in the driver's seat, still as stone. Then, faintly, the smell of blood. He turned back toward the yard. The masked figures were gone. Only footprints remained, 5 pairs, leading toward the tree line and vanishing into the snow. He didn't move until the flashing blue lights appeared at the end of the road, 18 minutes later. When the officers arrived, Ethan was still crouched on the roof, shotgun across his knees, watching the woods. Inside the cabin, they found chaos. Every window shattered, furniture overturned, the floor covered in snow and glass. Nothing stolen. Nothing touched except for the walls. Carved into the wood, deep and uneven, were 5 letters. HRLOW. Each letter gouged as if with a hunting knife. And in the center of the room, lit by the officers' flashlights, lay one of the reindeer masks. Its nose split, antlers cracked. The inside was slick with real blood. By the time the deputies left, it was almost midnight. Their cruiser's tail lights bled red through the falling snow, then disappeared down the unpaved road. The silence that followed felt heavier than before, like the woods themselves had been holding their breath. Ethan stood on the porch, arms folded tight against the cold. The 2 officers, both young and visibly uneasy, had done what they could, taken photos, measured footprints, collected the broken mask in a plastic bag. They promised to call when the lab results came back. But one of them, Officer Delaney, had said something that kept echoing in his head. "You sure you didn't imagine it, Mr. Harlow? Out here, it's easy to think you see people in the dark." Ethan hadn't answered, because the truth was, even now, he wasn't sure what he'd seen. 5 men in animal masks. His name carved into the wall. Real blood. It didn't make sense, unless someone wanted him rattled. He turned back toward the cabin. The broken windows were covered with the deputy tarps, but the wind still crept through, whispering against the torn edges. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Power had returned only 15 minutes earlier, humming back to life like a heartbeat. Inside, the air smelled of metal and smoke, the residue of gunpowder still hanging near the bedroom. He checked the shotgun again. 1 shell left in the chamber, 3 more in his belt. He'd cleaned the weapon automatically while the police worked, hands moving from muscle memory. He sat by the wood stove, feeding it a new log. Flames licked up the chimney. Outside, the snow thickened. He tried to call the sheriff's office again, but the line cut in and out. Too far from town. He considered packing his truck and leaving for the night. But the roads would be buried by dawn, and his gas tank was barely half full. Instead, he locked every door, rechecked every window, and sat down with a mug of black coffee that had long gone cold. The silence pressed in. Around 1:38 a.m., a sharp metallic cling broke through the stillness. Ethan froze. It came again, from outside, near the old tool shed behind the cabin. He killed the lights and moved to the window, keeping to the wall. The flashlight beam cut across the snow, empty. But he could feel it now, that prickling weight on the back of his neck. The same feeling he'd known on patrol in Afghanistan, when the desert night was too quiet. He stepped into his boots, shrugged on his jacket, and slipped out the back door, shotgun at low ready. The cold bit through his gloves as he crossed the porch, boots crunching on the crusted snow. The clink again. A chain, swaying in the wind. He reached the shed, hand on the latch, and stopped. The padlock hung open. He was sure he'd locked it that morning. Ethan pushed the door open slowly, barrel first. The beam of his flashlight swept across shelves of tools, an old lawnmower, stacked firewood, and then stopped on something new. A dead deer, gutted clean, hanging from a hook in the rafters. Its antlers had been snapped off and tied to the corners of the shed like some crude symbol. Beneath it, carved into the dirt floor with a hunting knife, was a single word: pack. Ethan stumbled back, bile rising in his throat. The deer's eyes were open, cloudy, almost human. Whoever had done this had taken their time. He turned toward the woods. Movement. A shadow slipping between the trees. Fast. Hey, he barked. Show yourself. Nothing. Just the wind. He fired a warning shot into the air, the blast echoing through the valley. Snow fell from the branches above. He waited. 5 seconds, 10, 15. But no answer came. Only then did he notice the small red blinking light half buried in the snow by his boot. He knelt, brushing it clean. A trail camera. His own. One of 3 he'd mounted around the property last fall to track wildlife. Someone had torn it down and left it here, facing the shed. The lens cracked, the SD card slot empty. Someone had been recording. He backed toward the porch, pulse hammering. The sound of the wine shifted again. No, not wind. A low hum. An engine. He turned toward the road. Far down the tree line, the black pickup's headlights flashed once more. On. Off. On. A signal, just like before. Ethan dug behind the porch railing, eyes locked on the truck. It idled there for a few seconds, then reversed slowly into the trees, vanishing behind a curtain of white. The silence that followed felt wrong, charged, as if something had been promised and delayed. By dawn, he hadn't slept. He sat in the living room chair with the shotgun across his lap, watching the fire die. The storm had buried most of the footprints outside, erasing the evidence. Only the shed remained, and the thing hanging inside it. When daylight finally pushed through the window, he forced himself to check the property. Nothing disturbed. No new prints. No signs of the truck. But when he returned to the porch, something stopped him cold. Pinned to the front door with his own hunting knife was a small photo. It showed the cabin, his cabin, taken from the woods the night before. In the window of the upstairs bedroom, Ethan could see himself, holding the shotgun, staring out into the dark. And just behind him, barely visible in the reflection, stood a figure wearing a reindeer mask. Ethan dropped the photo, heart hammering. The knife was driven deep into the wood, through the top edge of the picture. He yanked it out and slammed the door shut behind him. He paced the living room, running a hand through his hair. Whoever they were, they weren't random drifters. They'd known where to cut the power, where his cameras were, where to stand to photograph him. This was planned, targeted. He stared again at the carved letters on the wall. Harlow. His name. He suddenly remembered something. Years ago, before moving to Maine, he'd served with a man named Luis Vega. A quiet, steady corporal with a sharp aim and a temper he kept on a leash. Vega had been discharged dishonorably after a raid went bad in Helmand. 5 men dead. Ethan had written the after-action report. Vega had sworn it was a setup. Said Ethan's version of events ruined his life. Could it be him? Vega had been from southern Texas, fluent in Spanish. Silencio, la luz está encendida. Ethan whispered the phrase under his breath, remembering the voice outside. It fit. The tone, the cadence, older, rougher. If it was Vega, he wasn't alone. He had a pack. The day crawled by. Ethan tried again to contact the sheriff, but the line kept failing. He checked the truck. The tires were fine, the gas low. He packed a small rucksack, ammo, flashlight, flares, jerky, first aid kit. By 3 p.m., the snow stopped. The woods were silent again, but not peaceful. He made up his mind. If the cops wouldn't come back, he'd go to them, or at least to the nearest ranger station 15 miles east. He was halfway through securing the cabin when he noticed it. At the edge of the yard, just beyond the line of trees, 5 new reindeer masks hung from the branches like ornaments. They swayed in the wind, turning slightly, and as the light shifted, Ethan saw that each one had a name burned into the forehead. The first read Harlow. The next 4 were blank. Space for more. The snow had turned to fog by late afternoon, thick, pale curtains that blurred the trees into ghosts. Ethan pulled the truck out of the driveway, tires grinding through the slush, shotgun propped against the passenger seat. He'd left the porch light burning behind him, the only color in the white-gray hatch. He told himself he was leaving for good. Drive east to the ranger station, file a full report, let law enforcement handle it. Simple, logical. Survival 101. But when he reached the first bend in Blackwood Lane, his headlights swept across something that stopped him cold. A road flare. Still burning. Someone had jammed it upright into the snowbank at the edge of the road. Bright orange smoke twisting into the fog. Next to it, nailed to a tree, was a piece of plywood. Words burned into it with crude precision. Turn back, soldier. Ethan sat there, engine idling, breath fogging the windshield. They knew he'd leave. They'd planned for it. His hands tightened on the wheel. Every instinct screamed go, get out. But another part, the part the army had built and never dismantled, whispered no. He put the truck in reverse, backed into the narrow trail that cut behind his property, an old logging path that wound through the pines. If they wanted him to turn back, fine. He'd circle around. By the time he killed the headlights, the forest had swallowed the world whole. He hiked the rest of the way on foot, moving slow, every step muffled by snow. The fog wrapped around the trees like breath. Somewhere far off, a raven croaked once, then went silent. Ethan stopped every few yards, listening. The woods had a rhythm, and tonight it felt off, too still between the heartbeats. He reached the ridge overlooking his cabin. Through the trees, he could just make out the roofline, a small, dark shape in the white. The porch light still burned, steady. Then he saw the shadows moving below. 3, no, 4 of them, circling the house, each one carrying a flashlight, beams sweeping in synchronized arcs. Reindeer masks gleamed faintly as they turned toward the porch. Ethan steadied his breathing. He pulled the rifle scope from his pack and raised it. The magnification sharpened their outlines. They moved with discipline. Coordinated. One took the rear, one flanked left, another right. The fourth, taller than the rest, stood near the door, holding something metallic. A gas can. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. They were going to burn it. He chambered around, aimed at the can, finger tight on the trigger, then stopped. A sound cracked through the woods behind him. A twig snapping. He spun, rifle up. Nothing but fog. Then, faintly, a whisper. You shouldn't have come back. Ethan dropped, rolling behind a tree just as a shot split the air. Bark exploded beside his head. The echo tore through the pines. Another shot followed, higher, closer. He fired back twice, blindly, muzzle flash lighting the fog. A voice laughed, low, cruel, familiar. Vega. Still got that good aim, Harlow? Let's see if it keeps you warm. The laughter dissolved into the hiss of snow and the whisper of boots. Ethan crawled low, circling wide through the underbrush. His breath came in bursts. He could see faint shapes moving between trees now, the glint of metal, the flicker of flashlights cutting through mist. One of them came too close. Ethan rose fast, swung the butt of the shotgun, connected with a crack. The man went down hard. The mask split on impact, revealing a face tattooed across the cheek, a coiled wolf. Not Vega. One of his pack. Ethan didn't wait. He grabbed the man's rifle and moved downhill, every step measured. Below, the cabin's porch was on fire. Flames climbed the railing, licking at the windows. Shadows danced in the light. to figure standing at the edge of the blaze, watching it burn. Ethan took cover behind a fallen log, aimed through the smoke. One of the men, the tall one with the gas can, tilted his head as if sensing eyes on him. Then he lifted the reindeer mask away. Vega, 10 years older, heavier around the shoulders, beard streaked with grey. But the eyes, sharp, alive with the same cold fury. "You took everything from me, Hermano," Vega shouted into the night. "My name, my future. You left me to rot while you played hero." Ethan's voice was hoarse. "You killed 5 men, Louise. Because you told me to." The words echoed, torn apart by the crackle of fire. Vega raised his weapon. "You should have stayed hidden in your little cage, soldier boy. But you opened the door." Ethan fired first. The shot clipped Vega's shoulder, spinning him sideways. The others scattered, shouting in Spanish. Ethan sprinted from the trees, sliding across the snow, firing again. The air filled with smoke and splinters. Vega ducked behind the porch post, bleeding, laughing through clenched teeth. "You think this ends with me? We are already inside." Ethan hesitated. Inside? Then, a scream from the second floor. He froze. There shouldn't be anyone inside. Unless. He ran for the door, shouldering through the flames. The heat bit into his jacket. Inside, the living room roared with fire, walls cracking. He coughed through the smoke, eyes scanning. Something moved at the top of the stairs. A shape in a reindeer mask. Smaller. For a heartbeat, Ethan thought it was another attacker. Then the figure turned toward him, and he saw his own face staring back from behind the mask. A photograph, taped crudely to the front. His army ID picture. The masked figure didn't move. Just stood there, holding a small camera. The red light blinked. Recording. Ethan raised the rifle. But the person bolted, crashing through a window into the snow outside. Ethan followed, stumbling through the smoke, boots sinking deep. Outside, the fog had thinned. Vega was gone. So were the others. Only the fire remained, devouring the cabin in orange silence. And in the snow near the tree line, half buried under ash, lay a cell phone. Not Ethan's. The screen glowed faintly. One open message thread. Group chat. The pack. Luis Vega. Phase 1 complete. Unknown. Did he see the kid? Luis Vega. He will. The timestamp read 9:12 p.m., the night before the attack. By dawn, the cabin was gone. Only the chimney and part of the porch remained, blackened and steaming in the cold. Ethan sat wrapped in a blanket near the police SUV, hands shaking from exhaustion. The officers had questions he couldn't answer. About the gunfire. About the man named Vega. About the footprints. 6 sets this time, not 5. One smaller than the rest. Inside the ashes, they found a half-melted mask and the burnt frame of a camera. The memory card survived just long enough for forensics to extract a single still image. Ethan asleep in his bed, the night before the attack. The camera's metadata listed the timestamp as 9:12 p.m. But one detail made every officer fall silent. The photo was taken from inside the room. 3 days later, Ethan stood at the edge of the forest, staring at the ruins. Snow had begun to fall again, soft, innocent, erasing everything. A truck pulled up behind him, the sheriff himself this time. "We'll keep looking," the man said quietly. "But if these people wanted you dead, they had their chance. Maybe they're gone." Ethan didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the tree line. In the distance, through the curtain of snow, 5 figures stood between the pines, perfectly still, watching. The wind caught their coats, revealing the familiar shapes of the reindeer masks. One of them raised a hand slowly, a mock salute. Then they turned, vanishing into the fog. Ethan tightened his grip on the bandaged arm. He could still hear Vega's voice echoing in his head. "We are already inside." He looked back at the ruins, at the word carved deep into the one surviving wall, blackened but still legible. Harlow. Beneath it, scrawled in newer cuts. The pack will return. Story 2. The Halloween Watcher. Halloween night had always been Amelia's least favorite holiday. She used to love it as a child. Costumes, sugar, chaos. But something about the ritual of strangers knocking at your door in the dark had stopped feeling innocent. Especially after moving to Elmwood Street, where the nights felt longer and the neighbors never waved back. The clock on her wall blinked 12:47 a.m. She was half asleep on the couch, a half-empty bottle of wine beside her, when the ring finished playing on the TV. The credits rolled, pale blue light flickering across the living room walls. Rain tapped against the window in a steady rhythm. Outside, the street lamps turned everything sepia. Wet asphalt, mist, leaves plastered to the curb. Halloween had technically ended hours ago. The trick-or-treaters had vanished by 10. That's when she saw him, a shape in the distance, standing beneath the streetlight across from her house. At first, Amelia thought it was just another leftover costume. Maybe some teenager too drunk to go home. But the longer she looked, the less normal it seemed. The figure didn't move, didn't shift or sway like someone waiting for a ride. Just stood there, head slightly tilted, as though listening. He wore a black cloak that hung to his ankles, rainwater glistening off it. On his face, a Guy Fawkes mask, the grinning, hollow-eyed face from V for Vendetta. She let out a nervous laugh. Of course, she muttered. Very original. She tried to go back to the TV, but her eyes kept drifting toward the window. The figure was still there, still staring. The digital clock on the wall clicked over to 1:03 a.m. Amelia rubbed her arms, suddenly aware of the cold. Okay, that's enough of that, she whispered. She grabbed the remote and turned the TV off. The room fell into silence. When she looked back toward the window, the man was gone. Her chest loosened. She exhaled, muttering to herself, "You're fine, Mills. You're just jumpy." Creepy masked guy probably went home. She switched on the porch light to check, and froze. He was now standing at the end of her front walk. The cloak hung wet and heavy. The mask gleamed white under the porch light. In his right hand, he held something small, a doll. It dangled from its arm, head lolling to one side, hair soaked and tangled. Amelia's heart began to hammer. The man didn't move, didn't approach, just raised his free hand and knocked 3 times on the air, slow and deliberate. Then he pointed toward the door. Amelia whispered under her breath, huffed to break the tension. "Trick or treat yourself to fuck off." But the words felt thin, swallowed by the rain. She grabbed her phone, scrolling for 999, but the signal flickered, 1 bar, then none. Another knock, this time real. 3 dull thuds against the front door. She tiptoed to the peephole. The mask filled the circle of glass, motionless, the grin distorted by the curve of the lens. The doll's broken face pressed against the doorframe, its plastic eyes staring upward. Amelia's breath hitched. She didn't dare move. The knocking stopped. After a long, suffocating pause, she heard the soft scrape of footsteps retreating, slow, measured, fading into the rain. She waited a full minute before stepping back. Then another. Finally, she turned the deadbolt and moved away from the door, pulse still racing. Her phone buzzed back to life with 1 bar of signal. She dialed quickly. "Emergency services." "What's your—" The line cut out. She swore softly. "Come on." Lightning flashed outside, followed by thunder that shook the windows. The power flickered, then held. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "He's gone," she said aloud. "It's fine." But the rain had stopped, and through the sudden stillness, she heard a new sound. A faint tap, tap, tap against the living room window. Not random, rhythmic, like a slow heartbeat. She turned toward the sound. The curtains swayed slightly with each tap. She forced herself to approach, one small step at a time, barefoot on cold floorboards. Another flash of lightning lit the room. Through the curtain's thin fabric, a silhouette stood inches away on the other side of the glass. The mask, the eyes, and in its hand, the same doll, its head missing now, arm raised like a puppet waving. Amelia stumbled back, knocking over the wine bottle. Her phone slipped from her grasp. She didn't think, she just ran, bolting down the hall toward the kitchen, slamming the back door shut, twisting the lock. Her breath came ragged, hands trembling so badly she could barely hold her phone. She tried calling again. Come on, answer. This time, the line connected. Greater Manchester Police. What's your emergency? Someone's outside my house, Amelia whispered. He's wearing a mask. A noise cut her off, glass breaking, somewhere near the front. Stay on the line, the dispatcher said. Is your door locked? Amelia swallowed hard. Yes, both doors. He broke a window, I think. We're sending units now. Can you find a safe room to hide? She looked around. The kitchen had no lock. The pantry was too small. The bathroom, she whispered, already moving. She crept upstairs, careful to avoid the creaky step near the landing. The house was silent again, except for the soft hum of wine through broken glass. She reached the bathroom, shut the door, and crouched beside the tub, phone pressed to her ear. Units are en route, the dispatcher said. Stay quiet. Can you describe the intruder? Mask, Amelia whispered. White mask. Guy Fawkes. He had a doll. Her voice broke. Okay, you're doing great. Just stay. The signal crackled, then died. Silence. Amelia's reflection stared back from the dark window above the tub, pale, shaking, eyes wide. For a moment, she thought she saw another shape behind her in the reflection, the faint outline of the mask. But when she spun around, the bathroom was empty. Then she heard it. A sound from the hallway. Thump. Pause. Thump. Someone walking slowly, methodically, one step at a time. Closer. The floorboard just outside the door groaned. Amelia pressed her hand over her mouth. The doorknob rattled once. Twice. Then stopped. A minute passed. Then two. The sound of sirens began faint in the distance, rising through the rain. And then, just as the flashing blue lights washed through the bathroom window, the knocking came one last time, soft, gentle, almost playful. 3 knocks. Then silence. When the police arrived, the house was empty. The officers found the front window shattered and muddy footprints leading to the porch, then stopping halfway down the path. No sign of forced entry. No doll. No mask. Just a single piece of paper taped to the inside of the front door. Written in neat block letters. See you next year. The police left around 3:40 a.m. They had been polite, methodical. A pair of tired men in fluorescent jackets and heavy boots, stamping water onto her floor. They photographed the broken window, checked for prints, promised to follow up soon. But when the cruiser's red and blue lights faded down Elmwood Street, the silence that followed was somehow worse. Amelia stood in her hallway surrounded by fragments of glass, still barefoot, clutching the paper note in a shaking hand. See you next year. She almost laughed. The absurdity of it. The way the words looked like they'd been printed from her own home printer. For a long moment, she just stood there. Then, very quietly, she whispered, No, not next year. Not ever again. She packed that night, a duffel bag, her laptop, toothbrush, 2 pairs of jeans, and drove to her sister Henna's flat on the other side of Manchester. She didn't sleep. By morning, daylight had bleached the night into something almost bearable. Henna made tea, wrapped in a robe, listening as Amelia retold everything. The mask, the doll, the knocks, the police. When Amelia finished, Henna frowned. Males, it's terrifying. But it could have been a prank, yeah? Halloween brings out all kinds of idiots. Amelia wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe it so badly. But when she opened her laptop later that afternoon to distract herself, her stomach dropped. Her webcam light was on. She froze. She hadn't opened any video apps. She covered the lens with her thumb. The light went off instantly. Her fingers trembled as she checked her settings. Camera access enabled. Last used 2:03 a.m. Exactly when the man had been inside her yard. She slammed the laptop shut. "It's fine," she whispered. "You're fine." She wasn't fine. That night, she barely slept. Every sound in Hannah's apartment seemed amplified. The hum of the fridge, the radiator ticking, distant sirens. At 3:17 a.m., she woke suddenly, heart pounding. A faint sound, like a music box, was playing somewhere in the dark. Plink, 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 plink. She sat up. The melody was faint, almost childlike. She followed it into the living room. On the coffee table sat something that hadn't been there before. A doll. Wet. Mud caked along its arm. A new head crudely reattached with wire. The left eye missing. Amelia's breath came short. She looked toward the window. It was closed, latched. Hannah's bedroom door was shut. The music box inside the doll's chest slowed to a stop. Plink, plink. Silence. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You looked right at me this time." By morning, Hannah called the police again. They took the doll, the phone, the laptop. The officer, a young woman this time, tried to sound reassuring. "It's likely someone copied your Wi-Fi or hacked your webcam, Miss Whitaker. We'll check the metadata." But Amelia could tell she didn't believe her. By the second night, Hannah insisted they stay together in the same room. They fell asleep on the couch with the TV on. Around 2:41 a.m., a noise woke Amelia. Soft tapping, like fingernails on glass. She turned toward the window. Nothing. She exhaled, sat up, turned her head. A reflection. Behind her, in the dark hallway beyond the couch, just visible in the TV's flickering light, stood the mask. Motionless. Watching. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Hannah." But before Hannah stirred, the lights flickered, and the shape was gone. Only the faint smell of wet earth lingered, the kind that comes from freshly disturbed soil. The next morning, Amelia begged Hannah to let her check the CCTV footage from the building's main entrance. They found it. 2:39 a.m., the time stamped. The outer door opened, though no one entered. The camera fussed for 3 seconds, static lines crawling across the feed. Then, for a single frame, something visible. A white mask in the stairwell mirror. The officer they called back stared at the footage, grim-faced. "Could be reflection artifacts," he said quietly. "Light distortion." But his voice trembled. That night, Amelia decided to leave the city. She booked a cheap Airbnb in the countryside near Buxton. Stone walls, no neighbors, weak signal. She told Hannah it was just for a week of mental reset. Driving into the hills, fog curling over the road, she felt her chest unclench for the first time in days. The cottage was perfect, isolated, old, the kind of silence that made the air feel thicker. By 9 p.m., she had unpacked, made tea, and set her phone face down on the table. The world outside was black. She caught her reflection in the window, pale, tired, but alive. For a moment, she smiled. Then she noticed something behind her in the glass. A faint white oval, just at shoulder height. When she turned around, there was nothing there. Only her duffel bag. And something resting on top of it. A note folded once. She didn't remember putting it there. Her hands shook as she opened it. Neat block letters again, written in perfect symmetry. Check the eyes. Amelia lifted her gaze slowly to the fireplace mantel, where she'd placed a few of the host's porcelain dolls earlier when unpacking. One of them, the one with a cracked cheek, had new glass eyes. And in the center of each eye, behind the transparent film, was the faint reflection of a mask. The first night in the countryside, Amelia did not sleep. She sat by the window until dawn, her phone clutched tight, the folded note lying on the table beside an untouched cup of tea. Outside, Fog swallowed the hills whole, turning everything to pale milk. By morning, she told herself the message must have been left earlier. Some prank from the Airbnb host or the cleaner. It was easier than believing the alternative. Still, she gathered the porcelain dolls into a box and carried them outside. She placed them on the stone step, poured lighter fluid over them, and struck a match. Their painted faces melted in silence. When the fire went out, she felt lighter, almost free. At noon, she called the local police again. The man on the other end listened politely, then sighed. "Miss Whitaker, I understand you're frightened, but there's no evidence of anyone following you. You're in the country now. Maybe get some rest." "Yeah." She hung up before he could finish. Around 4:12 p.m., her phone buzzed with a new notification. "Unknown device connected to your Wi-Fi network." She froze. There were no neighbors for half a mile. When she opened the router list, the name made her stomach twist. Guy_Fox_camera. Her first thought was run. Her second, where? She turned every light on in the cottage. The shadows scattered, but not the feeling. Something unseen still pressed against the walls. She opened every cupboard, under the bed, the attic hatch. Empty, until she noticed the ventilation grate in the corner of the kitchen. A faint red light blinked inside. Her fingers trembled as she unscrewed it. A small camera lens rolled out, trailing a thread of wire. She hurled it against the wall. It shattered. Then, as if in reply, her phone buzzed again. "You shouldn't have done that." Amelia's heart pounded so loud she could hear her pulse. She backed into the living room, phone in hand, scanning every window. The fog outside had thickened again, swallowing the world. A shape began to emerge on the gravel path leading to the door. Slow, deliberate steps. Tall, broad shoulders. The mask. He stopped just beyond the gate, head tilted slightly, as if studying her. "Go away," she shouted through the glass. "The police are coming." No answer. Instead, he lifted something from his coat pocket, a cell phone, and held it up toward her. The screen glowed white. A live feed appeared, her own face trembling behind the window. She dropped her phone. Panic overrode everything. She ran to the kitchen, grabbed the carving knife, checked the back door, locked. When she turned back toward the front, the figure was gone. Only footprints remained on the wet gravel, vanishing into the mist. She didn't move for nearly an hour. When she finally dared to breathe again, the world had gone completely still. Rain began to fall. By midnight, Amelia's exhaustion turned heavy and feverish. She sat by the fire, wrapped in a blanket, knife still in hand. Every creak of the old cottage sounded like footsteps on the porch. Her eyes fluttered shut once, twice. And then, somewhere distant, she heard it. Tap, tap, a tap. 3 knocks. Measured. Even. The door. She froze. "No," she whispered. "No more." The knocks came again. Tap, tap, a tap. She gripped the knife tighter, stood, and stepped closer. "I know who you are," she shouted, though she didn't. "I called the police." A pause. Then a voice, muffled, low, gentle. "Amelia." "It's me." Her blood went cold. It was Hannah's voice. She ran to the door, pressed her ear against it. "Hannah, open the door. Please." It sounded like her, the same lilt, the same tremor. But something was wrong. Hannah didn't know where the cottage was. Amelia's breath trembled. "Say my nickname." Silence. Then the voice whispered. "Mills." Her hand hovered on the lock. That was right. Only Hannah called her that. She turned the knob. The door swung open. And for one frozen heartbeat, relief flooded her. Then she saw the mask. It was Hannah's voice, but not Hannah's eyes behind the plastic. She screamed and swung the knife. The blade scraped cloth. A grunt, then heavy footsteps retreating into rain. She slammed the door, locked it, backed away, gasping. Through the glass, she could see the silhouette standing at the end of the path again, motionless, illuminated by a single lightning flash. In his hand, something small dangled, her sister's locket. At dawn, the police found the cottage door ajar. No sign of forced entry, no signs of struggle beyond a few drops of blood on the threshold and a knife lodged in the floorboards. Amelia Whittaker was gone. The only thing left on the table was her phone, face down beside a burned candle. When the detective turned it over, the screen lit up to a paused video. A hallway. Her apartment hallway from Elmwood Street. Someone was recording from inside. In the final second of footage, the camera panned toward the door, and a hand reached out, holding a familiar paper note. See you next year. Epilogue. 1 year later, 31st October. Hannah Whittaker returned to Elmwood Street for the first time since her sister vanished. The city had changed, brighter, cleaner, as if trying to forget. She brought flowers. The landlord had already rented the flat to someone else, but the front step remained the same. Rain began to fall as she placed the flowers down. That's when she noticed it. An envelope taped to the door. No address. No postage. Just her name, Hannah, written in neat, block letters. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single photograph. Her sister Amelia, or someone who looked like her, sitting in a dark room, face blank, eyes glazed. In her lap, a broken doll with wire for a neck. On the back of the photo, in tiny printed font, were 3 words. She opened it. Hannah's breath hitched. She looked up, across the street. Beneath a flickering streetlight stood a tall figure in a black coat, holding a Guy Fawkes mask loosely in one hand. He didn't move. The rain blurred everything, the flowers, the photo, the world itself, until all that was left was the echo of a single rhythmic sound. Tap, tap, tap. Story 3. The Silent Caller. The city outside Logan Reed's window looked like a dying circuit board. Red taillights flickering through rain, billboards humming against the fog. The sound of his keyboard clacked under his headphones as he streamed Dead by Dawn to 2,000 viewers, his voice the only thing alive in the room. Chat, you see that lag spike? Not my fault. He laughed, eyes flicking to the side monitor. ISP's cooking tonight. A few laughing emojis flooded the chat. Logan smirked, but his reflection in the dark window didn't match it. Pale, tired, blue light pooling in his eyes. It was 11:07 p.m. when the first call came. The ringtone broke through his headset, sharp, mechanical. Unknown number, +1 666 000 0133. He frowned, half annoyed, half curious. Real funny, chat, he said into the mic, leaning toward the phone. Creepy number. Nice try. He let it ring out. A few seconds later, it rang again. Same number. Persistent, he muttered. He muted the stream, picked up the phone. Yeah. Silence. Not even static. Just faint breathing, mechanical, almost rhythmic. He hung up. 5 seconds later, the ringtone again. This time he answered with a mix of irritation and unease. Who is this? Still nothing. Then, barely audible, the sound of typing. Fast. Furious. Like fingers on a mechanical keyboard. He glanced at his own setup, as if the sound could be leaking from his mic. It wasn't. The stream overlay sat frozen, chat silent. He hung up again. Creepers, he muttered, forcing a laugh for the camera. Sorry, chat. Some trolls trying to be edgy. He resumed the game, but something in him had gone cold. Around 12:02 a.m., he ended the stream, stretched, cracked his knuckles. The apartment was quiet now, just a hum of monitors and rain tapping the glass. He scrolled through Discord, texted a mod, got a weird call midstream. Probably nothing. Then his phone buzzed again. +1 666 000 0133. He didn't answer. Instead, he opened the blinds and looked down at the alley below. Empty. Only a flickering neon sign from the noodle shop across the street. He let the blinds fall closed. At 2 a.m., he was editing highlight clips when his phone vibrated again, this time not a call, but a photo message. He clicked it open without thinking. It took him a moment to process what he was seeing. The photo showed his bedroom, the same one he sat in now. The camera angle came from the corner near his closet. In the image, he was sitting at his desk, the glow of his monitors reflecting in his glasses. But behind him, near the doorway, stood a dark figure, just barely visible. A shape more than a person. Logan's skin crawled. He spun around, flashlight app on. Nothing. He checked the closet. Empty. The hallway. Empty. The locks on the door still bolted. He checked his stream overlay. No one else had control. His webcam light was off. He stared at the photo again. Zoomed in. His own reflection in the monitor caught the faintest gleam of another pair of eyes behind him. He unplugged every camera in the apartment. Even covered the one on his laptop with tape. But his pulse wouldn't slow. He opened his security app, the one that monitored his door camera. Nothing recent, no motion alerts. Just as he exhaled, a notification popped up. Front door camera. Detected movement. Time 2:13 a.m. He tapped it. The feed loaded. Dark, static, then a faint outline. Someone was standing just beyond the hallway light. Tall, still, head slightly bent. The image glitched for half a second, then froze. He replayed it. Same frame, same shadow. Then, suddenly, the feed went black. Logan grabbed his baseball bat from under the bed, pressed his back to the wall. His mind raced, maybe a prank, maybe someone from the building. He forced himself to breathe and opened the apartment door a crack, peering into the hall. Empty. He shut it, locked it twice. The silence pressed in again. Only the faint hum of his computer fans filled the air. He turned and froze. The photo from before was now his desktop wallpaper. Every monitor showed the same thing. The image of him sitting at his desk, the shadow behind him. He yanked the power cord from the wall. Screens went dark. For the first time all night, true silence. And then, from the other side of the door, a click. Like a key turning. Slowly, he backed away, heart in his throat. The lock twisted, metal scraping metal. The knob turned halfway, stopped, then turned again. He shouted, "Who's there?" No answer. The handle jerked twice, then, finally, stopped. For a long moment, nothing. Then, from inside his phone speaker, a new sound. Breathing, followed by a voice, low and distorted. Stream starts in 5, 4, 3. The call disconnected. Logan didn't sleep. He sat on the floor until the sky turned blue over the rooftops, phone still in hand. When the morning came, he called the police. They found no forced entry, no evidence of anyone at the door. But they did find something else. A small, black USB drive taped to the underside of his desk. The drive contained a single folder. Inside, dozens of still frames. Each one a photo of Logan, taken from different angles around his apartment. The timestamp stretched back 3 weeks. When the officers left, the apartment felt smaller, tighter somehow. The USB drive sat sealed in a plastic evidence bag on the kitchen counter, like a trapped ghost. Logan kept staring at it, expecting it to move. The older cop, Detective Unease, had told him, "We'll send this to digital forensics. Probably a stalker. Could be someone you pissed off online." He'd smiled in that careful way cops do when they don't want to promise anything. "Don't stream for a while, okay? Lay low. Lay low." That was like telling a fish not to swim. Streaming was Logan's life, his income, his only real connection. Still, by nightfall, he turned every monitor to face the wall and unplugged every webcam. He wasn't superstitious. He just wasn't stupid. At 8:42 p.m., the building felt unusually quiet. The rain had stopped. leaving the window streaked and the air heavy with humidity. From the kitchen, he could see the faint pulse of the city through the blinds, a red and blue rhythm like the world's slowest heartbeat. He tried to watch TV, but every face on screen felt like it was looking at him. He muted it and scrolled his phone instead. The internet was full of theories already. Someone had leaked that he'd call the police. Reddit threads had titles like, "Streamer stalked by AI caller. The 666-0133 hoax explained." People posted screenshots of fake texts, Photoshop versions of the "stream starts in 5, 4" message. It was trending. His DMs filled with offers, sponsorships, interviews, fans begging for updates. He typed out a post. "I'm fine. Taking a short break. Appreciate the support." Then he turned the phone face down and closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he wished there was someone else in the apartment. At 11:11 p.m., his phone buzzed once. A notification from Signal. "Unknown number. You shouldn't have involved them." He froze. The message disappeared a second later, as if unsent. His stomach clenched. He checked the number. No metadata, no profile picture. The sender ID, 666-000-0133. A chill ran through him. He opened the app settings. The chat wasn't there anymore. He stood, phone in one hand, scanning the room like it might suddenly explain itself. Then his computer screens flickered to life. He hadn't plugged them in. The central monitor lit up first. A black background, white text typing itself in real time. "Hello, Logan. Do you like watching too?" His throat went dry. He reached for the power strip, yanked the plug. The screen stayed on. "I liked your stream last night. The part where you looked scared." The monitor's glow pulsed faintly, matching his heartbeat. He whispered, "What the hell?" Then the camera feed appeared, a live view of his living room from somewhere above him. He looked up. The ceiling went. He grabbed a chair, climbed up, and unscrewed the cover. A small black camera sat wedged inside, a red LED blinking. He ripped it out and slammed it on the counter, heart hammering. For a moment, silence. Then the monitor flickered again. "You're good at finding things. Try the others." He tore through the apartment. Walls, shelves, behind mirrors. He found 2 more cameras. One above the bathroom light fixture, one under the kitchen cabinet. Each was small, wireless, identical. Each one had been recording him for days. He stuffed them into a drawer, breathing hard. When he looked back at the screen, the text had changed again. "Too late. We've seen enough." The display flickered, then turned into a live feed again, this time from outside. A camera view of the hallway. Logan stared at it, realizing it wasn't from his building's security cam. This was handheld, shaky, close. The video feed moved forward slowly, toward his door. A metallic click sounded from the hallway. He ran to the door, shouting, "Who's out there?" Silence. He looked at the peephole, the corridor empty. When he turned back to the monitors, the hallway feed was gone. Now the screen showed his own face, captured in real time from somewhere behind him. He spun around. Nothing. The power died. All at once. The screens, the lights, the hum of the fridge, gone. Only the faint orange glow of the city leaked through the blinds. In that darkness, the sound of static rose, slow and crawling. From his speakers. Even unplugged, they whispered. A voice, distorted, mechanical, layered with digital noise, pushed through the static. "They're watching you, Logan. They always were." He stumbled backward, gripping the bat again. "Who are you?" No answer. Just breathing. "What do you want?" Content. The static spiked, a scream of digital feedback. And then everything went black again. When the lights came back, the monitors were dead. The phone in his hand buzzed once. A new message. A single image. The front of his apartment door. Freshly carved into the wood were the words, John Doe was here. By dawn, Detective Nunez was back. He took photos, promised to enhance the footage from the building's hallway cams. John Doe, he said, reading the carving aloud. You think that's the guy who called you? Logan shrugged numbly. That's not a name. It's a mask. Nunez looked at him sharply. Mask. Like anonymous. Placeholder. It's what you call a nobody. The detective scribbled in his notebook, eyes narrowing. Maybe not a nobody anymore. When they left, Logan tried to rest. He wrapped himself in a blanket on the couch, eyes fixed on the turned-off monitor. Sleep came in fragments. In one of them, he dreamed he was live again, bright lights, thousands watching, chat scrolling too fast to read. Then the feed froze. A shadow crossed behind him on screen. He turned to look, but in the dream, the camera panned itself slowly toward him, and his face wasn't his own. He woke sweating. Afternoon light filtered through blinds, slicing the air into bars. His phone buzzed again. Another message. Unknown sender. Look outside. He hesitated. Then, slowly, he pulled the blinds aside. On the fire escape opposite his window, a smartphone sat propped against the railing, recording. Its screen displayed a live stream page, Logan's Twitch channel. It was broadcasting. The title bar read, Live, the silent caller returns. Viewers, 12,407. The camera across the alley streamed all day. Logan watched the viewer count climb from 12,000 to 40. He hadn't touched his keyboard. Every time he tried to shut the window blinds, the chat exploded. Chat. Don't hide. Chat. We see you anyway. Chat. John Doe is proud of you, bro. He turned off Wi-Fi, unplugged the router, even killed power from the breaker box, and still, the stream stayed live on his phone. No cables. No signal. But his face was still on screen. By nightfall, he decided to leave. He packed a single bag, grabbed his passport, his camera gear, and stepped into the hallway. The elevator hummed, doors yawning open. Inside, mirrored walls, fluorescent light. As the doors closed, his reflection multiplied. 5, 6, 10 Logans, all staring back. The overhead light flickered. The elevator display glitched between floors. Then, faintly, the speaker above him crackled. Stream starts in 5. His stomach dropped. 4, 3. He slammed the emergency button. Nothing. 2. The elevator stopped. 1. Darkness swallowed everything. For a second, there was nothing. Then the mirrors filled with movement. Each reflection turned toward him, one by one, a fraction slower than the real Logan. The overhead light came back, but red this time, deep, humming, the color of a recording light. And in the farthest mirror, behind his reflection, someone else stood, a man in a hood, featureless face, head tilted. The phone in Logan's pocket buzzed. He answered without thinking. Mechanical breathing, a whisper, keep rolling. The elevator jolted back to life. Doors opened onto B1, the basement, though he'd pressed, lobby. He stepped out cautiously. The air was colder down there, the walls lined with old boiler pipes. A sign overhead read maintenance access. Authorized personnel only. He moved forward, flashlight beam slicing through dust. In the far corner, a monitor flickered on, small, ancient, CRT glow. It showed live security feeds from his apartment, bedroom, hallway, kitchen. Then a fourth window appeared, a new feed. A live shot of himself standing in that basement, flashlight in hand. He spun around. A camera lens blinked red above the door. He ripped it down, smashing it under his boot. Static flared across the monitor. Then the text appeared. You can't log off. He ran, up the stairs, 2 steps at a time, bursting into the lobby. No one there. The night manager's desk empty, a cup of coffee still steaming. The front doors were locked. The automatic sensors refused to open. He slammed his shoulder into them. They didn't budge. Behind him, the lobby TV turned itself on. His stream. The title had changed again. Live, the final episode. The chat was pouring in at impossible speed. Run, Logan, run. He's right behind you. We are watching from everywhere. He turned and saw his own silhouette reflected in the glass, trembling. Then another silhouette moved behind it. He bolted for the stairwell, sprinted up the steps toward the rooftop. His lungs burned. Sweat soaked his hoodie. The door at the top was heavy, rusted. He shoved it open into cold midnight air. Chicago spread below him. Orange hedge, fog, the drone of traffic far beneath. Wine tore at his hair. He stepped to the edge, chest heaving, phone vibrating in his hand. Another message. Smile for the outro. He looked at the camera lights across the neighboring buildings. Dozens of tiny red dots blinking in the dark. Every rooftop, every window, all pointing at him. What do you want from me? He shouted into the night. A whisper came from behind, soft, close. You already gave it. He turned. No one. Only the faint hum of a recording drone hovering 20 feet away, lens fixed on his face. Its speaker crackled. Say goodbye to your audience. He threw the phone. It sailed off into the dark, disappearing into the fog. The drone followed it down, vanishing. For a long moment, silence. Then, from somewhere in the depths of the city, the faint sound of applause. 3 days later, Detective Unease stared at the empty apartment. No signs of forced entry. Monitors black, walls bare except for a single sticky note on the main screen. The stream never ends. The Twitch page was still active. A looping video, grainy, distorted, played endlessly. Logan sitting in his chair, smiling faintly, unmoving. The timestamp on the stream never reset. It had been live for 72 continuous hours. The viewer count never dropped below 20,000. Epilogue. Months later, a new account appeared on Twitch, @JohnDolive. No description. No profile picture. Its first stream began at exactly 11:07 p.m. The title, Welcome Back, Logan. The camera showed a familiar apartment. Same desk. Same chair. Then, slowly, a figure entered frame. Hoodie, headset, eyes glowing faint blue from the monitor's reflection. He smiled, raised a hand, and spoke into the mic. Hey chat. Miss me? The viewer count spiked instantly. Stream status, live. Comments, disabled.